Okay, this video is a little different. It's like 20 plus minutes of me just talking, mostly. There's not a lot of gameplay. I think I did one raid throughout the entire thing. I want to have this conversation about PvP, about future content in Pokemon Go. So I try to just kind of cover a lot of different perspectives on PvP, my perspective, and then try to address a lot of other people's perspectives that have been shared online. And what I really want out of this is to just kind of keep this discussion going, because I feel like it's something that a lot of people want in the game, as I talked about later in the video. As you're watching, just try to hold your comments until the end. I know that's not possible. A lot of you are probably commenting based on the title alone right now. But I do want to hear feedback. I want to hear from the community, and I know Niantic wants to hear from the community on this. So they're listening, they're reading, I promise. I just want this whole video and all the comments to be a discussion of every possible perspective on PvP in Pokemon Go, because I think not only do I want to hear it, but Niantic wants to hear it. They want to hear feedback from the community. They want to know what the community wants in this game. So since they can't directly ask, what do you want from a PvP system, I'm asking now. Let's have the conversation. I'll be in the comments replying and interacting. So if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you have opinions, put them in the comments. So without further ado, here's a very long episode where I sit in the car most of the time and talk about PvP. Enjoy. So this video today will take place almost entirely right here in my car. This is actually a discussion that I started last week, at the end of last week. I started recording this while I was sitting in traffic, and because of updates and stuff, Shiny Lugia, Community Day, the things that happened at the end of last week, this discussion sort of got pushed back. But we're talking about it today. We're going to finish it up today. So to start, I'm going to flash back to last Thursday, I want to say, when I started talking about this topic, and before I got my haircut, so just keep that in mind when you're looking at my head. This entire conversation, this entire video is made with the assumption that the battle system would be updated before PvP actually becomes a reality in Pokemon Go. Okay. I figure while I'm stuck in this LA traffic, it's a perfect time to talk. Normally I would listen to a podcast, but why not record one of my own? It's not really a podcast, but I just want to follow up yesterday's video about maps and scanners and all that stuff. If you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it, check it out. It's interesting. But I've been reading the comments all morning, and I just want to respond and kind of follow up with some ideas. The main point of that video was that Niantic can design things in Pokemon Go, add new features and systems in the game that essentially negate the benefit that's provided by using a map or a scanner to find perfect IV Pokemon. I pointed out things for increasing EVs like protein, carbos, or even training, and then a lot of people in the comments told me, let me know, that there's actually an item called a bottle cap, or a golden bottle cap, in Gen 7 in Sun and Moon that actually does increase IVs, maxes out IVs. So I was not aware of that. I've been so busy and so focused on the channel and Pokemon Go that I haven't finished Sun and Moon, so I didn't even know that item exists. But knowing that now, there is clearly a precedent for being able to increase IVs in the main series games, and that could easily be ported over to Pokemon Go. In fact, knowing that, I'm even more confident now that eventually we will get a way to increase IVs in Pokemon Go. One concern that someone brought up was if you can increase a Pokemon's IVs, you don't need to do hundreds of raids to find your perfect IV raid boss. Obviously, that's going to be bad for business. People won't be doing as many raids, but one of the big draws of doing that many raids is the XP. People who are doing that many raids definitely care about XP, so there's always that pull. And you can just make bottle caps a raid reward. Make them rare, like TMs, maybe even rarer than TMs. And you'll need to do a lot of raids if you want to max out all your Pokemon IVs. So it's easy to add this new IV increasing system without taking away incentives from doing raids or other features in Pokemon Go. Now to follow up on the rare Pokemon portion of yesterday's video, Niantic has made certain Pokemon more accessible through raids. A lot of meta-relevant Pokemon are raid bosses. Machamp, for example, Tyranitar, these are raid bosses. Tyranitar can be duoed, Machamp can be soloed, which means basically anyone can get a good Machamp now, as long as there's a gym around and you just wait for that raid to pop up. The same thing can be done for a lot of other meta-relevant Pokemon. It's the same way for legendaries. The way the game is now, legendaries are the strongest Pokemon. The best water type is Kyogre, the best ground type is Groudon, the best electric type is Raikou. These are raid bosses, and they were available. They were easy to get, provided you had enough people, easy enough that anyone could have them if there's a community to play with. And the reason all these different factors are important is because eventually, when PvP gets added to Pokemon GO, the barrier to entry needs to be as low as possible. First of all, this is a mobile game. It's meant for more casual audiences than the core gaming audience. One of the biggest issues with competitive play in the main series Pokemon games is that the barriers to entry are really high, or at least they used to be a lot higher. You used to have to spend hours, days, months breeding for perfect IVs, EV training. It was very difficult to get a team ready for competitive play in the main series games. Over the last few years, the last few generations, as the Pokemon Company has embraced competitive play, they've made it a lot easier to get competitive ready Pokemon. This is really evident in things like being able to breed for IVs. There's items that help you breed for IVs. The introduction of bottle caps in Gen 7 to max out IVs, so you really don't have to spend a ton of time getting a team ready for competitive play. It's a lot easier to jump into competitive now because of the systems that they've added into the main series games. And still every time PvP gets brought up, there are those people who say Pokemon GO doesn't need PvP. Obviously, I disagree. I think that opinion is the minority. I think anyone who grew up playing Pokemon games, anyone who's a fan of the main series games, would probably want to see some kind of PvP in Pokemon GO. When the game was first announced, the Pokemon community went wild. We expected this to be the game that we've always wanted, the real-life Pokemon adventure that we've always wanted. Obviously, when it came out, we realized, it's a little stripped down, definitely. It's not quite the framework for the real-life Pokemon adventure that we've all been dreaming of since we were 10 years old. Things are missing. But being able to battle with your friends has always been a very big part of Pokemon. Battles are the main focus of the game, the TV show, the trading card game. It's all about battling. And we have heard Niantic say that PvP is something that's made its way onto the roadmap for Pokemon GO. So it will come, eventually, once they can get it right. The question is, how do they get it right? And why do they actually want it? Niantic's goal, beyond just Pokemon GO, as a company as a whole, is to create real-world experiences, to get people out and exploring, and to get people out and interacting with each other. This goal is the driving force behind nearly every feature that's been introduced in Pokemon GO from the beginning. Obviously, putting Pokemon in the real world means you have to go out in the real world and find them. The introduction of raids was a huge step for cooperative gameplay because it requires you to coordinate with a group. The community has become a lot stronger since raids were introduced. So the question is, how does PvP contribute to those goals? How do you design a PvP system that gets people out in the real world and also gets them to cooperate? How do you design a system that is both competitive and cooperative? And for me, the most obvious answer is to make PvP battling a team game. Essentially, instead of one-on-one battles, well, you could have one-on-one battles, but there are double battles, there are even triple battles in the main series games. There are ways that you can put teams against each other. In the original trailer for Pokemon GO, we saw what we thought was a hint at PvP. There was a scene in the trailer where there's a group of trainers, a group of girls at a skate park, a group of guys pulls up, tosses all their Pokemon out, and it appears to be like a 3-on-3 battle. If you look closely, you can see that it's taking place at a gym. It's obviously not an indication of PvP, but rather just that, battling would be done at gyms. But by making PvP focused more on team battles, you have both competition and cooperation in the same system. So team battling solves the problem of making PvP both competitive and cooperative, but how do you actually encourage people to get out and go? It's easy. Tie it to gyms. If PvP can only be done at gyms, then obviously you have to go to a gym to battle someone. It could work similarly to raids, where you have a public lobby, or you could create a private group and give the code to your friends if you want to battle among your friends. You could get into the lobby, choose your Pokemon, your friends could get into the lobby, choose their Pokemon. When everyone's ready, the battle will start. Or you could do a public lobby and just battle with whoever shows up there. I don't want to get too much into the mechanics of how PvP should work. I've talked a lot about that in the past. I think the battle system needs to be reworked. Tap and swipe alone in PvP is just gonna fail because there's no challenge involved. Obviously, abilities should be added, multiple charge moves should be added. There are definitely things that need to be done to the battle system before PvP could actually work. Now, if PvP is team-based, it could be based on your actual in-game team, or you could just battle with each other regardless of team, but knowing Niantic and the mechanics of the game and how they've handled Ingress, I would expect if it is team-based to be based on your actual in-game team, which means we would probably need a way to battle outside of your teams because some people are on the same team and you might want to battle your friends who are on the same team. So there could also be rewards for PvP to encourage people to do it. And maybe you get better rewards if you participate in bigger PvP battles. So 1-on-1, small rewards, 2-on-2, better rewards, 3-on-3, the best possible rewards. And if you want to look at it from a business perspective, you could require some kind of battle pass, a PvP pass, the same way that raids require a raid pass, so that you would be limited on the amount of PvP battles you could do in one day, unless you're willing to spend Pokecoins to earn more. You could even keep people moving by limiting your battles to 1 battle per gym per day. So if you want to do multiple battles, maybe you have to do them at different gyms. Just a thought. These are just thoughts at this point.
All right, Nick. All right, Chris, take care.
Later. Just need a clip to fill this time, to show the passing of time. I've been hanging out with Dante.
Sorry.
I'm going home now. Cool, man.
Later.
Cool. So now I'm driving home from LA at the worst possible time, 6:45. This will be fun. We can always talk more. I hope you guys don't mind talking. I know it's been a while since I've made suggestions, criticisms like this of the game, so hopefully you're enjoying that. One of the things that I envisioned, and again, this is just my personal vision for the game, when the game was first announced, I imagined being able to be a gym leader. You could set up a gym, or you could take control of a gym, and people would actually have to come to the gym to challenge you to take control of it. If PvP were implemented, incorporated into the gym system, that could actually be a reality. You could just hang out at your favorite gym at your local park, and people could come challenge you for control of it. Let's be honest, the gym system has gotten stale again, and I think without introducing some kind of real interactive system, no matter what changes, it's always going to go back to that. Some areas are going to have really high gym turnover. Some areas, you're going to leave a Pokemon in there for a week. In highly populated areas, players are already actively defending their gyms by using golden raspberries. So I don't think it's too far-fetched to assume that players might want to actually defend their gyms by battling other players in real time. And again, this is really all optional. You could keep the current gym system and just add PvP as something else to do at gyms. Now, to kind of follow up where I left off, and I'm not sure exactly where I left off because I haven't watched that last clip since I recorded it, but I posted on Twitter asking for your opinions on PvP. I asked, do you think PvP should be introduced in Pokemon Go? Why or why not? And from over 800 replies, and yes, I did read all of them, there are a few key things that stick out. I should have actually put up a poll so we could see how many people were yes and how many people were no. Maybe I can actually do that today since I don't know when this video is going to be posted. Maybe tomorrow. From the yes camp, the reasoning was mostly, we need something to do, right? It's a staple of the Pokemon franchise that battling is a part of that, battling with your friends. So I think anyone who's been playing Pokemon since before Pokemon Go came out wants PvP in Pokemon Go. From the no camp though, there were 2 main reasons that stuck out to me. 1, spoofers will have the advantage, and 2, it's going to be boring with the current battle system. So let's talk about 2 first. Yes, it would be terribly boring with the current battle system. It would come down to just tedious min-maxing, trying to figure out the best IV combinations to squeeze out one extra point of damage, or let your opponent hit you for one extra point of damage that's not going to knock you out, but that'll let you charge up your charge move faster so that you can fire it off. It would be like a really annoying process. It would be a competition of DPS, essentially. So yes, and I've talked about this before, the battle system absolutely needs to be reworked and changed and updated before PvP gets introduced in Pokemon Go. That's a given. This entire conversation, this entire video is made with the assumption that the battle system would be updated before PvP actually becomes a reality in Pokemon Go. Maybe I should have said that at the beginning. I'll put that clip at the beginning. So yes, I've been saying this since before Gen 3 came out. With Gen 3, we should have seen a battle system rework. There are Pokemon in Gen 3 like Shedinja, like Slacking, who really need their abilities to function as they were intended in the main series. That's the reason we don't have Shedinja yet, is because without its ability, it doesn't work. So I'm still, fingers crossed, I'm still hopeful that we will see a battle system rework in Pokemon Go soon, potentially, obviously, before Shedinja and a few more Gen 3 Pokemon get introduced in the game. So yes, to those of you who are saying no, PvP would suck because the battle system sucks right now, you're right. We're talking about PvP as if the battle system has been updated. Now, the other main reason that people don't want to see PvP in Pokemon Go is spoofers. And personally, I don't think the argument spoofers have the advantage should be used for holding back any type of new content in Pokemon Go. Yes, we always know that spoofers will have the advantage because, well, they're not limited by the physical world, because they are these higher dimensional beings who can just teleport and bend space and time to suit their needs. That being said, there are definitely ways that PvP could be designed in a way that doesn't allow spoofers to have the advantage, or that even prevents spoofers from even participating. One is the entire video that I posted last week about maps and scanners in Pokemon Go, adding ways to increase IVs in the game, adding ways to find rarer Pokemon or make rarer Pokemon, meta-relevant Pokemon, more accessible, such as putting them in raids, soloable raids at that, so that way everyone has a chance to get the most meta-relevant Pokemon, the Pokemon that would be like top tier in PvP. If you make those accessible in soloable tier 3 raids, spoofers don't have an advantage anymore. So there are definitely elegant ways that you can design systems in the game that would even the playing field, in a sense. Spoofers, people who use maps and scanners, they can get their 100 IV Pokemon, but if you give regular, like legit vanilla players a way to get their 100 IV Pokemon, that's fine. It might take a little longer, but everyone can get a competitive ready team in Pokemon Go without having to resort to spoofing or using maps or using feeds. If you make it possible within the game, there's no real advantage other than a little bit of extra time. My last point is that you can definitely design a PvP system in a way that locks spoofers out of participating. I don't know how technologically feasible this is, I don't know how easy this would be to implement, but imagine a system where once you actually get into a PvP lobby with someone, your phone checks via like Bluetooth. Your two phones will communicate via Bluetooth to check to make sure that they're actually there nearby. I don't know what the range is on Bluetooth, it's not that long, so you'd have to be sort of close to the person you're actually battling, but if you're at the same gym, then you should be pretty close to each other anyway. But that way, the lobby checks, one, that you're in the same GPS location, that's something spoofers can fake, but two, that your phones are actually within a certain range of each other, that's something that spoofers can't fake. If you're sitting at home using your joystick, your phone's not going to communicate with the other person's phone via Bluetooth or some other form of like short distance communication. So sure, someone could spoof from home, go catch their Pokemon, and then show up at the local gym to actually PvP battle, but if that's the case, then they're not spoofing anymore, and you've completely achieved your goal of getting people out and playing the game. And like I said earlier, if there are ways for players to get perfect IV Pokemon without having to use feeds, without having to spoof, then there's no advantage there. And you've won because the spoofer is outside. Not you've won, you're not going to automatically win the battle, but Niantic has won by getting the spoofer out to participate in this new and exciting PvP system, theoretically. And again, I don't know if Bluetooth works like that, if your phones could communicate, you could check to see if both phones have the same Wi-Fi networks in range. There are definitely ways of checking to see if two devices are in the same location without solely relying on GPS. There were a few other concerns from the no camp. One was safety, liability. Something like PvP could potentially introduce a more toxic community, which is, it's always possible, but it's the same with anything in life. There are some replies from people who are afraid that PvP could put people in danger because someone could become physically violent if they lose a battle. But I mean, if that's the case, then don't battle strangers. If that's what you're afraid of, just battle your friends. PvP should be entirely optional. That was another concern. There were people who said, I don't want to participate in PvP, which is fine. It should never be required. A system like PvP, especially in a game like Pokemon GO, should be completely optional. You don't have to participate if you don't want to. There shouldn't be any rewards that you can only get from PvP. It should all be supplemental. But saying that Niantic shouldn't introduce PvP because it makes them a liability if someone gets in a fight is like saying you would hold the YMCA responsible for a fight because they provided the basketball court where two people were playing against each other. And I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if Niantic could actually be held responsible in some way, but it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate indication of this compensation culture that we live in, that has to be something that people are concerned about. I'm almost to my meeting for the day, so once I'm done with this, I'll get back on Twitter, check a few more responses, and see if there's anything else we can talk about on the drive home. Also, I just want to say while I'm sitting here at this red light, sorry if these thoughts are a little disorganized. I can't really refer to notes while I'm driving, but on a day like today where this time between meetings is really the only time I have to talk, that's just the way it has to be. I hope it hasn't been too difficult to follow along. At this point, I think I've addressed most of the big or the common concerns with people that people have with PvP. One other concern is that it would be unfair for lower level players, obviously. And I think this is just a given of any PvP system. There would be a ranking system, a tier system, or you just make it so that players can only battle players who are of similar level to them. Obviously, in Pokemon GO, you can't max out your Pokemon until you're level 38, so you make the highest tier level 38 and up for people who have maxed out Pokemon, and below that, you could make it open so that only people of equal level can battle each other. It's a bit limited, but unfortunately that's just the way it is with Pokemon GO. If you're level 35, your Pokemon are going to be stronger than a level 34 trainer. If you're level 34, your Pokemon are stronger than a level 33 trainer. So the only way to really make that fair in that sense is to only let you battle trainers of the same level. Or, and I don't really like this solution, but you could just make it so that everyone's Pokemon get evened out. Everyone's Pokemon are max level when you enter PvP. There's precedent for that being done in the main series games, where everyone's Pokemon gets set to level 50 or whatever. But there are plenty of ways that you can make PvP fair in that sense, so that higher level players aren't just beating down lower level players constantly. So with almost an hour of driving ahead of me, so let's just keep talking. Why doesn't PvP work with the current battle system? It's not just because it's tap and swipe, it's because it's so predictable. The damage formula in Pokemon GO is so strict, there's no room for flexibility at all. We can calculate down to the millisecond. We can calculate before a battle even starts exactly who will win in a PvP situation. We have simulators like Pokebattler that calculate this now for raid bosses. Obviously things are a little bit different there because the raid bosses sort of randomly use their charge attack. Not randomly, we understand how they use it, but the only randomness in the battle system now is when the raid boss or the enemy Pokemon decides to actually use that charge attack. In a PvP situation, you're basically going to be charging up your charge attack, firing it off as soon as possible. And in that situation, we can calculate exactly who's going to win, exactly how many hits it's going to take, exactly how long the battle's going to last. And that's why PvP doesn't work in the current system. Way too predictable. The only way that that system becomes interesting or challenging, or that you have any freedom of creativity or flexibility, is if you calculate something like, let's say, in a Dragonite versus Lapras matchup, as the Dragonite, if you have 13 defense IV, the Lapras deals 1 extra damage and you fill up your charge bar 1 second faster or with 1 less quick attack from the Dragonite, and then you can use your charge move and surprise the Lapras. That's it. That's not fun, because once you figure that out, then everyone knows, oh, 13 defense Dragonite is the counter to a Lapras, right? That's not exciting. What we need... Oh god, do I really want to get into a battle system rework right now? What we need from the battle system is a little bit less predictability, a little bit more randomness. Not a ton, because if it feels like every battle is left up to random chance, then no one enjoys that. We need a little bit more variability so that, for example, in the current battle system, if you use Thunder Shock against a Kyogre, for example, it'll deal like 6 damage every single time. 6 damage without fail. But what we need is a little bit more variability so that sometimes it might deal 7 damage, sometimes it might deal 5 damage, and that way you can't predict exactly how long it's going to take to beat something. And then of course, status conditions, abilities, all that, any amount of depth is incredibly welcome in Pokemon GO's battle system. Alright, at this point I feel like I'm just rambling, so I'm gonna, I guess, get home, start chopping this up, and if I feel like there's anything I need to add, we'll do that. For the rest of this drive, I guess I'm listening to a podcast. So the podcast I chose to listen to was one of the podcasts that I listened to, I guess. It's Mark Rosewater, the head designer of Magic the Gathering, has a podcast where he just sits in his car and talks, like kind of like I've been doing for this entire video. And in the episode that I was listening to, one of the main points that he was making is that not everything in a game is for everyone. You can't design mechanics in a game to please everyone, because then no one will have a really strong connection to it. I think the way you put it is you don't want to design something that everyone likes, but no one loves. So obviously PvP is not for everyone, just like any mechanic of Pokemon Go is not for everyone. Some people don't want to raid, some people don't want to play with other players, and that's totally fine. Some people want to be solo players, some people just want to complete their Pokedex, some people want to hunt shinies, some people, like myself, just want to travel as much as possible and meet all kinds of different people in different countries and different cultures while playing the game. And the great thing is, you can do any of that, but you don't have to do all of it. The same goes for PvP. So I did finally put up a poll on Twitter, and I think like 4,000 or 5,000 people have voted on it right now, and almost 80% of people responding said yes, they do want PvP in Pokemon Go. 80%, and then I also added the caveat that, like, don't think of it under the current battle system because we know this battle system needs to be reworked before PvP is introduced, so there would probably be even more yeses if I had said that in the original question when I posted the poll. But that's still almost 80%, and that could be a little bit biased because I talk about PvP a lot, so maybe people who are following me who are voting on this poll are the type of people who do want PvP, but then it could also be biased the other way because players who wanted PvP from the beginning and still didn't get it might have quit the game. So I think PvP is the type of thing that could bring a lot of players back into the game. So to get back to the point, PvP doesn't need to be for everyone. It just needs to be for the people who want it. And according to the poll that I posted, that's almost 80% of people playing Pokemon Go. There are a lot of responses to that, like, no, I would rather have quests, or no, I would rather have this or that. But we can have all of that. Quests we know are coming to Pokemon Go. Introducing PvP doesn't mean we're not going to have quests. You can have both. If you don't like PvP, you can do quests. If you don't like quests, you can do PvP. All I'm saying is it's not going to hurt. If you introduce PvP, you make 80% of players happy because they finally have PvP, and the 20% who don't want it don't have to do it. Alright, I know this episode has gone on long enough, this video, this conversation, this discussion, so I'm, again, interested to hear your thoughts. Leave them in the comments. Let's talk about this. Maybe I'll start up a live stream and we can actually like talk real time about PvP, about any kind of future additions to Pokemon Go, things that you think could improve the game, things that maybe we haven't even thought of, things besides PvP and trading and quests, because we all know there's a lot more potential for this game and for this community. Let me know what you think. I'll see you tomorrow.